Every time your blood sugar spikes after 60, something happens in your brain that absolutely cannot be undone. It does not matter if the spike seems small. It does not matter if you feel completely normal and fine right after. The damage is happening at a cellular level, quietly, invisibly, and with every single high-carbohydrate meal you eat. You do not need to have diabetes. You do not need to feel sick. The spike alone is enough to cause lasting damage. And here is what makes this so frightening. Your blood sugar does not have to be diabetic to be destroying your brain. The range your doctor calls normal after 60 is still high enough to accelerate brain cell loss with every single spike. In the next few minutes, I will show you exactly what happens in your brain during a blood sugar spike after 60. I am Dr. Edward. This channel gives you honest health information that protects your mind every day after 60. Let me show you what is actually happening upstairs every time you eat something that sends your blood sugar too high. Your brain is the most metabolically active organ in your body, consuming 20% of all your energy daily. No other organ in your body is as sensitive to fluctuations in blood sugar as your brain is every single day after 60. That means it is also the organ most exposed to the effects of blood sugar for better and devastatingly for worse. When blood sugar rises sharply after a meal, glycation begins. Glucose molecules attach themselves to brain proteins. These glycated proteins become damaged, and dysfunctional neurons begin to lose their ability to communicate. The hippocampus, the part responsible for forming and retrieving memories, is especially vulnerable to this. Research shows that people with frequent blood sugar spikes have measurably smaller hippocampal volume overall. Smaller hippocampus means fewer memory connections, words that disappear mid-sentence, names you cannot recall. It means sitting down to read and finding the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing what it actually said. The fog that settles some afternoons, the slowness that was not there 5 years ago, blood sugar is the real cause. Not one of these is normal aging. Each is a measurable consequence of blood sugar spikes left completely unaddressed. These are not personality changes or laziness. These are measurable biological effects of glucose damage on your brain. The second mechanism is inflammation. Every blood sugar spike triggers neuroinflammation throughout your brain. Neuroinflammation is exactly what it sounds like. Your brain tissue inflaming in response to the glucose overload. In a young brain, this resolves quickly. After 60, the resolution is slower and damage between spikes accumulates. After 60, the brain's ability to clear inflammatory debris between spikes becomes noticeably slower and less efficient. Each spike leaves a slightly larger residue of damage than the last, and this compounds across every single meal. Over months and years of repeated spikes, this accumulated neuroinflammation drives measurable cognitive decline. The third mechanism is insulin resistance in the brain itself, a condition some researchers now call type 3 diabetes. When brain cells become resistant to insulin, they lose their ability to use glucose efficiently and begin to starve. Starving brain cells cannot maintain their connections, cannot fire properly, and eventually enter irreversible decline. This same mechanism is found at the core of Alzheimer's disease, and blood sugar spikes are a primary accelerator. The connection between blood sugar and Alzheimer's risk is now one of the most studied areas in brain research today. People with the highest post-meal spikes have 2 to 3 times the dementia risk of those with the lowest spikes. Here is what shocks almost everyone: your blood sugar does not need to be diabetic to destroy your brain this way. A post-meal blood sugar of 140 to 160 milligrams per deciliter considered normal is still damaging brain tissue. Studies using continuous glucose monitors show most people over 60 spike to these levels multiple times every day. After breakfast, after lunch, after the evening snack, after the orange juice that seemed completely innocent, the toast that seems harmless, the fruit that seems healthy, the evening cracker, every spike takes something from you. Each spike, Each wave of glycation, each pulse of inflammation adding to a brain debt that never gets repaid. And here is what is most important to understand. You cannot feel a blood sugar spike while it is damaging your brain. There is no pain, no alarm to tell you that neurons are being glycated and inflammation is spreading right now. By the time you notice the cognitive changes, the fog, the forgetfulness, the slowness damage has built for years. Acting before symptoms become obvious is not optional. It is the only window where damage can still be slowed. The encouraging part, what most people never hear, is that glucose damage is partially reversible when caught early. Brain tissue that has not yet died can recover some function when blood sugar spikes are consistently reduced over time. Before I walk you through what to do right now, I want to ask something important before we continue any further today. If this video is changing how you think about every meal you eat after 60, subscribe and tap the bell right now. And after the full protocol, type 1 in the comments so I know this information reached you and made a real difference. The goal is not to eliminate all carbohydrates. Restriction without strategy creates its own problems after 60. The goal is to stop the spikes, keeping post-meal blood sugar from reaching the range where brain damage accelerates. Step 1. Eat protein before carbohydrates at every meal, because this one sequence change reduces spikes dramatically. When protein enters your stomach first, it slows gastric emptying. Carbohydrates reach the bloodstream more gradually. Studies show eating protein before carbohydrates reduces post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 30% consistently. Eggs before toast, chicken before rice, fish before potatoes. The food is identical, only the eating order changes. This works because protein triggers a different hormonal response than carbs, one that prepares your cells for glucose. Step 2. Walk for 10 minutes after every major meal, because movement is one of the most powerful glucose regulators. When you walk after eating, leg muscles absorb glucose directly from the bloodstream without requiring any insulin. A 10-minute post-meal walk reduces the blood sugar peak of that meal by up to 30% compared to sitting afterward. This does not require speed or effort. A slow, casual walk around the block after lunch protects your brain every time. Even standing after meals rather than sitting produces a measurably lower blood sugar peak than complete rest does. Step 3. Replace refined carbohydrates with fiber-rich options, because fiber slows glucose absorption at the gut. White bread, white rice, and processed cereals enter the bloodstream almost as fast as pure sugar does, causing spikes. Swapping even half of these for whole grains, legumes, or vegetables reduces post-meal glucose peaks measurably. Step 4. Add vinegar before high-carbohydrate meals whenever you simply cannot reasonably avoid them each day. Research shows 1 tablespoon of vinegar before a meal reduces post-meal blood sugar by 20 to 35% on average. The acetic acid in vinegar slows the enzyme that breaks down starches into glucose directly, reducing the spike speed. This simple addition costs almost nothing and requires no prescription, yet its effect on blood sugar is significant. Step 5. Prioritize sleep, because even one night of poor sleep causes significant insulin resistance the next day. After one night under 6 hours, your cells respond to insulin 25% less efficiently. Every meal spikes higher. After 60, when insulin sensitivity is declining, sleep deprivation compounds the brain damage risk very significantly. This is why people who sleep poorly consistently report more brain fog. Poor sleep and blood sugar are directly linked. Fixing your sleep alone can reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes meaningfully before any dietary changes are even made. Protein first, post-meal walks, fiber swaps, vinegar before meals, and restorative sleep. 5 brain-protecting steps. None of these require medication or a prescription. Just the right information and consistent action every week. These 5 steps work together, each amplifying the others when applied consistently across every single day. Within 2 to 3 weeks, most people notice clearer thinking, more sustained energy, and noticeably less mental fog. One more thing before you go. The most common brain protective food that most people stop eating after 60 today. That food is eggs, and most people stop eating them over an old cholesterol fear that science has since overturned. Eggs contain choline essential for producing acetylcholine, your brain's primary memory neurotransmitter after 60. Low choline intake after 60 is associated with measurably faster cognitive decline and smaller brain volume over time. 2 eggs daily provides roughly 250 milligrams of choline shown to protect memory in adults over 60 consistently. They also provide complete protein, reducing your blood sugar spike when eaten, before carbohydrates at the same meal. The cholesterol fear around eggs was never strongly supported by evidence. Nutrition science has largely moved past it. 2 eggs eaten first, before the rest of your breakfast, may be the single most brain protective habit after 60. Every meal is either protecting your brain or damaging it, and now you know exactly which side each choice falls on. The blood sugar spikes since 60 were never inevitable. They are addressable, starting with your very next meal today. Your brain is not a fixed object. It is a living, responsive system that reacts to what you feed it 3 times daily. Give it the right conditions, and it will protect you far longer than you may have believed possible right now today. If this video helped you understand something your brain has been telling you for years, type 1 in the comments. Share this with someone over 60 who thinks blood sugar is fine. Fine is not the same as protective of the brain. The video on screen covers another hidden driver of brain decline after 61 that starts early and is stoppable. I will see you there, and starting with your next meal, I hope you give your brain the protection it deserves.